I am 77 years old, and this is hard to say even now. I spent most of my life keeping happiness at a distance. Not because it wasn't there, but because I didn't trust it. I thought if I never reached for it, it couldn't leave me. People who know me might find that strange. They might say I had a normal life, a job, a family, a roof over my head. And that's true. Nothing terrible happened that explains it easily. That's what makes this uncomfortable. When I was younger, people often called me serious. They said I was reliable, steady, someone who didn't get carried away. I wore that like a badge. I thought it meant I was doing life the right way. I grew up in a quiet house. Not silent, but careful. My parents worked hard and worried a lot. Money was always discussed in low voices. When something good happened, it was followed by a pause. Like everyone was waiting for the balance to tip back the other way. If someone laughed too freely, there was often a reminder not to get ahead of ourselves. If a plan sounded exciting, it was followed by questions. What if it rains? What if it costs more than we think? What if it doesn't work out? I didn't learn to celebrate. I learned to prepare. And preparation felt safer than joy. When I left home and started my own life, that mindset came with me. I worked early and stayed late. Not because I loved the work, but because it gave me structure. Structure made me feel in control. I had relationships, real ones. People who cared about me. People who laughed easily and dreamed out loud. And I remember feeling uncomfortable around that. There was a woman I loved when I was young. We shared a small apartment for a while. Nothing fancy, thin walls, old furniture, but she filled the place with warmth. I remember one evening in the kitchen, she was leaning against the counter, laughing about something that had happened during the day. The window was open, the air was warm. It was one of those moments that doesn't announce itself as important. I should have smiled back. I should have stepped closer. Instead, I felt a tightness in my chest, a quiet warning. This won't last. I didn't say that out loud. I said something practical instead. Something about tomorrow, something about bills or time. Her laughter faded. The moment closed. I didn't think much of it at the time. That's the thing. These weren't big decisions. They were small habits. If something felt good, I questioned it. If a moment felt light, I reminded myself not to get used to it. I told myself I was being realistic. I told myself this was maturity. I married later on. Built a life that looked solid from the outside. I was present, but guarded. I showed up, but I stayed contained. At birthdays, I handled logistics. Who was coming? What time to eat? When to clean up? While others laughed, I watched the clock. At holidays, I focused on plans. Travel times, costs, schedules. I told myself someone had to keep things grounded. When my children were young, they would get excited about small things. A trip, a surprise, a simple afternoon. I smiled, but carefully. I didn't want to promise too much. I didn't want them to feel let down if something changed. I thought I was protecting them. But looking back, I see that I was mostly protecting myself. I didn't trust happiness because happiness felt temporary, and temporary things felt dangerous. I believed that if I kept my expectations low, I could avoid pain. So I stayed balanced, even, controlled. Over time, people adjusted to that version of me. They shared good news with excitement at first, then with caution. Then, sometimes not at all. I noticed that people didn't linger in conversations with me. They were polite, kind. But something was missing. Evenings became quiet. I would sit in the living room after everyone went to bed. The television on low, a lamp glowing in the corner, the same chair every night. Nothing was wrong. That's what I told myself. But nothing felt full either. I didn't feel deeply sad, and I didn't feel deeply happy. I existed somewhere in between. And for a long time, I thought that was the safest place to be. Years passed that way. Not quickly, just steadily. I told myself there would be time later, time to relax, time to enjoy things, time to feel lighter, but later kept moving further away. And without realizing it, I was building a life where joy knocked often, and I never fully opened the door. It wasn't a dramatic moment that changed things. No argument, no illness, no sudden loss that forced my hand. It was an ordinary afternoon. I was alone in the house, the kind of quiet that isn't peaceful, just empty. I was looking for a document in a drawer and found an old stack of photographs instead. They were loose, bent at the corners. Some of them had faded more than I expected. I sat down without thinking much about it. The chair by the window, light coming in from the side. I started flipping through them slowly. There I was in most of them. Younger, standing next to people I loved, at birthdays, at gatherings, in places we once thought were important. And something about my face in those pictures unsettled me. I wasn't unhappy, but I wasn't open either. My smile looked practiced. My body leaned away, just slightly, like I was present, but already preparing to leave. That's when it became clear to me, not all at once, but gently. I had spent my life bracing for disappointment. And in doing so, I had kept joy at arm's length. I hadn't just avoided pain, I had avoided feeling too much of anything. I sat there longer than I meant to, holding photos that felt heavier than paper, realizing that many of the best moments of my life had passed through me without fully landing. I didn't cry, I didn't feel angry. I felt tired of the carefulness, tired of the constant watchfulness, tired of acting like happiness was something that needed permission. Once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. I started noticing the patterns everywhere. How I changed the subject when someone spoke about joy. How I stayed busy to avoid sitting with good feelings. How I kept conversations practical when they wanted to become personal. I remembered how people had slowly learned not to share everything with me. Not because they didn't care, but because I made it hard to meet them there. That understanding came with a quiet grief. Not sharp, just deep. There were things I lost without realizing I was losing them. Closeness, ease, the simple comfort of being fully seen. I didn't miss out on luxury or success. I missed out on warmth. On moments that could have filled a room if I had let them. I think about people I loved who are gone now. Not the big events we shared, but the small chances I didn't take. The extra minute I could have stayed. The words I could have said without measuring them first. I can't go back to those moments. They belong to a different version of me. One who believed safety mattered more than openness. Now, at 77, joy looks different. It's quieter. It shows up in smaller ways. A warm cup held with both hands. A familiar voice on the phone. Sunlight moving across the floor in the afternoon. And I notice it now, because I know how easily it disappears when you don't welcome it. I don't blame my younger self. He was trying to survive the way he knew how. He thought restraint was wisdom. He thought hope was risky. But I wish he had known this. That happiness does not ask you to be naive. It just asks you to be present. If you are listening to this and something in it feels familiar, I want to speak to you directly now. You don't need to wait for the perfect moment to allow yourself to feel good. You don't need permission. You don't need a guarantee that it will last. Enjoying something does not make the ending worse. Avoiding joy does not protect you from loss. It only makes life quieter than it needs to be. Let yourself laugh when it comes. Let yourself stay in the moment a little longer, even if part of you feels nervous, even if you've been careful your whole life. You don't have to change everything. You don't have to become someone else. You just have to stop pushing happiness away when it reaches for you. I can't rewrite my past, but I can sit here now and tell the truth about it. And that honesty feels like a kind of peace. This isn't a warning. It's a sharing. I spent many years believing that keeping my heart guarded was the responsible thing to do. I see now that it was also the loneliest choice I made. I am 77 years old. I didn't allow myself to be happy for a long time, but I finally understand what that cost me. And knowing that, even this late, feels like coming home quietly without needing to explain myself to anyone.